morning. I'm Alan. Today is Sunday, September 12th, and this is our online Bible study at 9:15. And I'm glad you joined us, and I hope that you'll follow along in your Bibles or on your tablets or in a Kindle reader as we go through 2 Samuel chapter 6. And today's lesson is about praise in dance, or being joyful in worship. And it's about the time King David moved the ark from where it was up to Zion or Bethel or Jerusalem, where King David made his home. And like I said, today's lesson is from 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 1 through 5 and verses 14 through 19. And there's a chunk left out, verses 6 through 13, which we will look at because it gives us some of the context for the later verses in today's lesson. So let's look at the background of 2 Samuel. As David becomes the newly crowned king, he decides that the Ark of the Covenant needs to be relocated. And this is a major production. And it was very significant, and it's important for us to see this, that one of David's first acts was related to Israel's spiritual life. And so David consulted with his officials, and his proposal to move the ark was met with enthusiastic agreement. And the ark had been at Kirith Jearim, also known as Baalah of Judah, and we find this back in 1 Chronicles chapter 13, verses 1 through 8, which we're not going to look at. Now, before David could put his plan into effect, he was delayed by 2 attacks of the Philistines. After these battles, he captured the city of Jerusalem, and he set up his government there. Jerusalem became the capital of David's kingdom. And we just saw recently in history that the United States moved their embassy back to Jerusalem. You know, tradition and history says that this is the place where the capital of Jerusalem was for many, many years. And at this time, David made it so. Once he was established in Jerusalem, once the government was set up, once things were running normal, David returned his attention to moving the ark. Now, let's talk about the Ark of the Covenant. You've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they make a big deal about it, but it's more fiction than fact. Though in the movie, the fiction makes out the ark that's in the movie to be the real one, and of course, throughout the movie you see what happens, and as we look through the history, some of that is true based on the Bible, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But at the end of the movie, the United States government gets the Ark of the Covenant, and they put it in a big warehouse where all these other boxes that are supposedly arks of the covenant, and Indiana Jones was, well, they don't even know what they have. The Ark of the Covenant was lost to history, and we'll see that in a moment also. But the Ark of the Covenant the Ark of God is also called the Ark of the Covenant. You'll see both terms used interchangeably. It was called the Ark of the Covenant because it contained the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments that Moses brought down from the mountain. And it was a holy portable chest which had a mercy seat on it and 2 cherubim or angels on each end with the mercy seat in the center. This is where God told Moses that he would meet with him if he had any messages to relay to Moses. It represented God's physical presence here on earth, and also that he was physically present with the Israelite people. Now, the ark was Israel's most sacred object. It was that way during the wilderness period, and it was something that they carried with them on their wilderness journeys. That's why it was such an important thing, because the physical representation of God being with the Israelite people. Now, before the Babylonian captivity took place, the Ark of the Covenant had these things in it. It had the stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments. You can look that up in Exodus chapter 16, verse 33. And that says, "So Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of measurement," an omer is a measurement of manna, "then place it before the Lord to be kept in generations to come." So we have the 10 Commandments, we have an omer of manna, where God fed the Israelites in the wilderness, and it had a third item. It had Aaron's rod that budded before the Pharaoh to prove that Aaron was chosen by God. During the wilderness wanderings, the ark was kept in the tabernacle, which was a portable tent, a worship center for the Israelite people to observe the Sabbath. And so wherever the camp moved, the ark and the tabernacle moved. But once the Israelites were established in the Promised Land, the ark and the tabernacle moved to Zion, Bethel, and it resided there until it was captured by the Philistines. They carried it into, the Israelites carried it into battle, panicked, lost it, the Philistines captured it. And then when the temple was built, the Ark of the Covenant was moved to stay at the temple in Jerusalem. Now, let's look at some of the history before we get into today's lesson about the ark and what happened and why David needed to move it. When Samuel was judge and Saul was king, the Philistines captured the ark in a battle. And you can read all about that in 1 Samuel chapter 4. And once the Philistines had the Ark of the Covenant, God sent signs and he sent sicknesses on the Philistines until they decided, hey, we need to return this sacred object, this holy object, back to Israel. And so they sent it to Beth Shemesh, which means house of the sun. But while the Philistines had the Ark of the Covenant, God struck down 70 men of the town who tried to look inside the ark. After this, they decided, hey, between the tumors that God sent, besides the sicknesses that we had, and now that God has struck down 70 of our men, we don't want anything to do with the Ark of the Covenant. And so they called for the priests at Kiriath Jearim to come and get the ark. And they did. But no attempt was made to return the ark back to the tabernacle that was currently based at Bethel. So it remained in Kiriath Jearim for 20 years. Then, even though the Philistines returned the ark, King Saul neglected it. He acted and lived as if it wasn't important, if it wasn't even nearby. And so we get to today's lesson, and it begins, and it's all about the Ark of the Covenant and David moving it back to be close to him, back to the tabernacle for worship. And so we begin in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. And verses 1 through 5 is all about moving the ark. See, remember, the ark symbolizes God's presence, and it was the holiest item containing the holiest items in the tabernacle. And so removing the ark from Kiriath Jearim required a lot of planning. Verses 1 and 2. David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000. He and all his men went to Baalah in Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is called the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim on the ark. So David selects this large army of 30,000 men. Why? In case they were attacked by the Philistines while they were moving the ark. He didn't want anything to happen to the ark. So he made plans that if they try to do a sneak attack or they try to attack us, we will have the manpower to defend it. He also forgot that God is capable of defending himself, and we'll see that in a moment. Because the ark was coming back home, so to speak, this was an occasion for great celebration. So there was going to be great praising and dancing. Verses 3 and 4. They set the Ark of the Covenant on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on a hill. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the Ark of God on it, and Ahio was walking in front of it. So they had this brand new cart to transport the ark. And the sons of Abinadab were selected to guide it down the hill on its journey, and they were in front of and beside the cart that had the Ark of God. And then in verse 5, as they're moving the ark, it tells us David and all Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord, with castanets, harps, lyres, timbrels, sistrums, and cymbals. Now, sistrums is kind of, we don't see those in modern orchestras, but it was like a rattle, sort of like those those noise makers that you spin around and they kind of, sort of like that. But they were a different type. That they had a frame, and then they had rods going through, and so when they shook it, it made noise. And that's what a sistrum was. And then the other one, harps and lyres and castanets and cymbals, we all know what those are, and we've seen and heard those. And so as the ark is being moved, there's singing and there's the music of many instruments, and they're preparing for a successful moving of the ark. And it was easy to get swept up in all of this celebration. Why? Because it was a great deal. The ark was coming home. But they were making some mistakes in moving the ark. even though David and the Israelites wanted to do a good thing, they had not discussed the matter with God. So that everything they did and everything that they were doing was not according to God's instructions in the Old Testament. And because of this, it was going to fail and it was going to cause problems. In fact, Uzzah would die because they didn't follow God's directions for moving the ark. And just a short summary, God's directions to move the ark didn't say anything about a cart, old or new. The ark was only supposed to be moved one way, and that was carried by the Levite priests on poles that slipped through rings that were built into the ark when it was built. And so they would use the poles, one on each side, and 4 Levite priests, and they were to carry the Ark of the Covenant. And David's mistake was he didn't follow God's instructions, which are clearly in the Old Testament, but he used a cart, which was contrary to God's directions. And so in verses 6 through 13, it tells us what happened. These are not part of today's lesson. Today's lesson is all about celebration and praise, but it's worth taking the time to read these verses, and it gives us the background between verses 1 through 5 and verses 14 through 19. And what happens in these verses is they describe the tragic death of one of the Israelites in their very first attempt to bring the Ark of God back to Bethel, or back to Jerusalem. It's not part of the lesson, but it gives us some background. It helps us to understand what happened between the first attempt to move the ark and the second attempt found in verses 14 through 19. And it tells us what happened because David failed to consult God on how the Ark of God should be moved from place to place. And so as they're traveling the short distance to Jerusalem, the oxen stumbled, which caused the cart to shake, and Uzzah, who was walking beside the cart, and he had the best of intentions, grabbed a hold of the Ark of the Covenant to keep it from falling off the cart onto the ground. But God had declared in the Old Testament that only Levites could touch the ark, could move the ark. And so he became angry with Uzzah, and he killed him right on the spot. That's found in verses 6 and 7. Well, what happened is David became angry because the Lord had brought his anger against Uzzah, and David, felt most likely that Uzzah didn't deserve it. He was trying to do the right thing. They were all trying to do the right thing, but they didn't follow God's instructions he wanted followed in moving the ark. And so David became angry and he became afraid of the Lord that he wasn't going to take the ark into Jerusalem until, number one, get over his anger, and number two, figure out exactly how he was supposed to move it to Jerusalem. And that's in verses 8 and 9. And so instead, David says, take the ark into the home of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, where it remained for 3 months. And it says the Lord blessed him and his whole household. And it doesn't tell us what exactly the blessings were, but I'm sure it was along the lines of health. It was along the lines of a good crop. It was along the lines of other good things happening that could only be attributed to God's hand. And so that's in verses 10 through 11. And so when David hears that the ark is blessing the house of Obed-Edom because the ark of God was there, David again determines to bring the ark into Jerusalem. But this time he would be successful because he was going to do it the right way. And you find that in verses 12 and 13. So it's worth going back and taking time to read the whole chapter. There's a lot of good stuff there. And so our lesson picks up again back in verses 14 and 15. It says, wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might. And then in verse 15, while he and all Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. So again, they're praising God. They're doing the musical celebration, and they're moving the Ark of God. And so verses 14 and 15 could be titled, If at First You Don't Succeed. This is David's second attempt to bring the ark to Jerusalem. 3 months have passed. Now, there's a lesson here for us. The people of Israel did not dwell on past failures, and neither should we. We need to learn from our mistakes, and we need to do better the next time. And that's exactly what King David does. And in the 3 months that had passed, he learned what he did wrong. Placing the ark on a cart was not allowed. The ark and all the other sacred items were to be carried on the shoulders of the Levite priests. That's all the way back in Numbers 7. There's a whole list of instructions if you want to go back and read that. And so, keeping the Lord's commands in mind, David makes this second attempt to move the ark. Again, he does it with great celebration. It's a good thing. It's a good thing when you're in the Lord's presence. It's a good thing to celebrate when you're in the Lord's presence. And so he put on this ephod, which is a priestly garment, and he danced before the Lord with all his might. I don't know if you are familiar with the original movie Footloose. It's about a town that banned dancing, and the kid moves in, and he, that's his favorite thing, and he does dancing, and he wants to do dancing, but they of course had banned it and outlawed it. But he speaks before the city council, and this is one of the verses that he uses in talking to the council, because the bad preacher is on the city council, and he's one of the ones that had helped outlaw the dancing. And Rhett McCormick goes up there and he says, David danced before the Lord with all his might. And, there's some denominations that prohibit dancing mainly because of what they think it can lead to, and they may be right. But I do know the Bible says that we need to be willing to celebrate. We need to be willing to praise. And if we do it with dancing and shouting, then the Bible and God is okay with that. And so the people of Israel shouted for joy, and they offered sacrifices as the musical instruments played. And so we come to the next part, verses 16 through 19, which is both celebration and criticism. Verses 16 through 19. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place beside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After he had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins to each person in the whole crowd of Israelites, both men and women. And all the people went to their homes. So he has this, he gets the ark moved, he has this celebration. His wife, not too happy about it. His first attempt at moving the ark didn't go well. But David's second attempt was a success. What's the difference? Well, he consulted the Word of God. He consulted the priests. He did it the way God wanted it done. And so after 70 years of neglect, the ark was once again in its rightful place as the center of importance, the center of worship for the Israelite people. And so the ark, of course, symbolized God's presence with his people. And so here it's now in Jerusalem. And now Jerusalem is both the religious and the governing center of Israel. After that first attempt was so hard and so wrong, this second attempt was so much better. And so all of Israel celebrated with King David. And during this time of entry into the city, Michal, David's wife and daughter of Saul, looked at David's display of praise with contempt. But David didn't care. He was focused on worship, on praise, and fellowshipping with God's people. He offered sacrifices before God. He blessed the people, both men and women, with gifts of food and wine to take home with them. It was a great day. It was a joyous day. It was a celebration. And David's praise for God's grace should not be minimized or dismissed. And as a demonstration of his joy and his thanks, his gratitude to God, David fed the people. And see, when our hearts are filled with cheerfulness and joy, our hands ought to be open, freely giving. Jesus taught that lesson in the New Testament. He said, those whom God has shown mercy or grace ought to show mercy or grace in forgiving others. David also wanted to let the people know that he had a heart for them, that he cared for them. And even those that didn't care for David, didn't care for his prayers, would still love him for his generosity. Proverbs 19 verse 6 says this, everyone is a friend of one who gives gifts. And David's kindness would encourage the people to freely join him, again, if he had a need for them to help him in a time of battle or in a time of crisis. So, we learned David had a love for the things of God. And so should we. He also knew how important the Ark of God was to Israel. And so he made it his mission to retrieve it and bring it to Jerusalem and placed it in an important place in the tabernacle, so the people would once again know how important the ark was and how important God was to the Israelite people. So all the people of Israel praised God with musical instruments, and they danced. It was a joyous celebration. Well, like the Israelites, we ought to get excited when we see God working in our lives. And David shows us that any and all response is appropriate for acknowledging the things of God. Also, how we accomplish things is important. We must consult God's word to do the right thing, and also to make sure that we honor the Lord. The only way for us to know God's will is to first test it against God's word. And if we do that, we will always be doing the right thing, and God will honor that. Let us pray. Almighty God, teach us to love you like David did. Teach us to seek after God like David did. And when we celebrate, when we worship and honor you, to do it our way without worrying about others seeing it. Help us to seek to glorify you always and glorify only you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I hope that you'll come back and join us for worship here in Paris at 10:10 a.m. Also live on Facebook and YouTube. And an announcement, September 26th, we are having Rally Day. It will be a little bit different. It will be a puppet show. It might be some talent. It'll be some hymn singing. And so I hope that you'll join us. I'll try to put as much of it online as I can. And so if you're not able to make it, you'll still be able to watch part of it. But I hope that you'll come. I hope that you'll put September 26th at 10:10 a.m. on your calendar as Rally Day. And I hope to see you tomorrow, and have a great Sunday.